out because I was in this facility. And I haven't even told anybody this part. So look at you being vulnerable in terms of
thank you
opening
for
up about that.
sharing. I appreciate you
Yeah.
being vulnerable and sharing.
Yeah, but the process.
I feel like your story will help somebody else who's going through these difficult times, you know? So every story helps and every story will heal.
Absolutely. There were just so many layers of it was very abusive.
Yeah.
Extremely abusive. It was familiar.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
And I'm not joking. I know there are people who are like, and they have valid, I understand. I'm a very critical thinker, and I understand why people are like, that doesn't exist. This is just life. God is not there. But like literally God got me out of that.
Yeah.
And there were days where I just got on my knees and I begged, not even prayed. I begged God, like, please, if you just get me out of this,
Yeah.
I will commit to being alive.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first part, like committing to want to be alive.
Yeah.
Before I could start creating the life that I dream about.
Everyone has a story, and I feel like every story will help and every story will heal.
One of my favorite quotes is by Toni Morrison, and it reads, "All water has a perfect memory and is forever trying to get back to where it was."
Welcome to the Art and Hustle Gallery Conversations. I'm LindaLCheung, and I'm excited to have here Brittany. We met at Momentum, and I'd love for you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
We met last weekend. I was staffing the advanced course with Momentum Education, and got the pleasure and the privilege to experience your magic, Linda. I'm so happy that we got to meet. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. It's also been a while since I've done anything remotely close to this. Although people are not here, I know people are going to see this. Mm-hmm. So please bear with me through any of that stuff. But my name is Brittany. I'm a loving, powerful, grateful leader, coach, and educator. I'm a former teacher. Moving into entrepreneurship now. And so I know in a second we're going to talk a little bit about my business, The Black Spot. But I basically coach professionals who are looking to learn, love, or travel internationally. I also support with relocation services. I recently stretched myself and took a really huge risk in moving abroad. So I am in Rwanda right now, where I currently live.
Momentum was advanced momentum that we met was amazing, transformative, and challenging.
Yes. Oh my God, yeah.
I think that would be a great word, is challenging, which is, you know, great. And it was just amazing to be able to go through the whole process. And I was gifted it by my friend, high school friend, Dr. Sunrise Smith. So since she recommended it, I was like, I have to keep pushing through, you know, because she went through it and she knows me for so long that I was like, all right, whatever challenges, I have to keep pushing.
Yes. And you were, if I can be a little bit candid, one of the people who had resistance.
Yes. Yes. On day one.
On day one, yes. And I recognize that because if you talk to my emo, she'll tell you like I terrorized her.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was like, I'm not doing this. I'm leaving. On day one. So
on day one, oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, that's
so we have that in common.
So that's amazing that we have that in common. And you actually you were one of the first assistants or anybody to reach out, message me to see, hey, Linda, okay? Because I'm sure I had that resting bitch face on day two, because I was like, I'm just gonna be here. I can't speak right now, so I'm just gonna be.
Yeah, I can tell. I mean, body language is 90% of whatever the, of language. But I could just tell, even from being, just over Zoom, we weren't in the same room, but I could feel the tension and the resistance that you were holding. And I wanted to, number one, I mean, it's just curiosity. I wanted to know why. It's just being a coach and being curious, but also I wanted to ensure that whatever it was, if you needed support in the moment to get past that thing, that it wouldn't block the rest of your experience. Now, granted, I want you to have your own experience, but I didn't want it to block the rest of your experience for the weekend with your team. And in one of the activities, you ended up as being one of the team leaders. I'm not going to say what that is, just to give it away, but which was very emotional for you. I think that was the first time that us as a staffing team looked and was like, oh, look at Linda. She's breaking down, she's having her breakthrough moment. So that was really
It was definitely one of the exercises that we had that really helped me break that day 2 open, because I think I shared were you in one of the exercises that I did? I shared some special stories about me and my childhood and stuff like that. Okay. Yeah. So once I was able to fully immerse myself in there and then tell my stories, that helped me, cry and let it out. And then I was able to get through the rest of it because I wasn't holding back anymore. And to tell those stories are like the worst stories that I don't think I normally tell people, because it's not a story that people or me want to tell and hear, because it's really hard, So once I shared that, and then the other exercise, I was like, what? Like, what? How did that happen?
How did I be vulnerable? How did they get me to do this?
Or how did I'm going to cut all of this out. But day 1, it was literally like, what the hell? And I was upset with myself that I let myself get to the point where I got upset.
Yeah.
Like, because being like a recovering people pleaser, like I just fucked up right there. Like becoming, just being a good girl and always agreeing and be nice to everybody. Like I just fucked up completely. And I just like, because I'm kind of in this stage of like, I have no more fucks to give.
Yeah. Well, I will say, at least my experience of you during the weekend was not people pleasing. So that is good. I think that you stood in your power with that, if that was a goal for you.
Yeah. Like that's how I used to be. I used to be just like a good girl, people pleaser, and just agree with everybody. So now that I've gone through my own like transformation before Momentum, I can't do it anymore. So like my good girl face, like I just can't do it. So day 1, it was already like, okay, I can't do this.
Yeah, but you did. You not only did it, you finished, you graduated.
Yeah.
You're going to leadership, right?
I am.
Yeah.
I'm pushing myself there because one of my girlfriends who I had talked to during the whole process, she knew, because I was like, listen, I'm out. I'm not doing this. I'm and she was all for it. I was telling her my, just how I was feeling. And she's like, yeah, don't do it. Just leave. It's fine. It's perfectly fine. And so I was completely like, all right. But then like the next day I was like, all right, let me talk to some other people who's in it. Like I have a friend who I said who moved to leadership. I was helping her through her sexual abuse conversations. And I talked to Sunrise. And as soon as I talked to Sunrise, I can hear by the tone of her voice that I'm going back. Fuck.
Yes. I was about to ask, I'm just curious, the friend who told you to just do it and just leave, have they completed Momentum? Are they a graduate?
No, I recommended her to it. And
okay, I was about to say, I don't think a graduate of the program would tell you that. They must be somebody who's never done it yet. So I'm glad that you didn't listen to that and you actually talked to someone who had the experience before.
Yeah. It's fun. Well, I talked to 2 people and they were both like, yeah, don't leave, go and do it. So they both didn't do Momentum. And then I talked to 2 more people who spoke to Momentum, who did Momentum. And I was like, yeah, I'm going back. Yeah. I can't quit. I'll wait till Sunday because,
Yes. Well, I'm so happy that you did.
It was really hard. It was really hard to go back, but I'm thank God I pushed through, and I got to push through and talk to everybody. Okay. So tell me a little bit about where you grew up and how your childhood was.
Yeah. I am a Philly girl. I grew up in Philly. My younger years, I grew up in West Philly in a housing project that no longer exists. They've rebuilt it since, and my street and my house are gone. And then when I was like 12, no. Trauma does this to my memory. Give me a second.
Oh yeah, me too. I'm always like, trauma really messes it up. Yeah.
Yeah. So we lived in like a row house in a housing project in West Philly. with my maternal grandparents, my mother's mother and my mother's father. Most of her siblings, except for her brother, who had gotten killed by this time. But it's probably like 12 of us in this 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house, row home. And then when I was like 9, my mother purchased her first house, and we moved to a neighborhood called Southwest. I don't know if you're familiar with anything about Philly. So I
I've
really
been to
claim
a couple of
West.
places.
Yeah, I claim Southwest a lot more than I claim West Philly. But yeah, so we moved there when I was like 9. And my mother was a single mom, so she worked just ridiculous hours.
Yeah.
And at that point, I really became a parentified child. Because I had a younger sibling who had a disability, and my mother was also starting a new job when we moved there. So it was just a lot of moving parts to this transition that I was navigating essentially by myself, and also like playing multiple roles in it. It's funny because me and my mother, we had a conversation. I talked to my mother for maybe like almost 3 hours the other day on Sunday. And I told her, I was like, it took me to move, not even across the country. She was like, across the country. I said, no, across the world, for us to really, get to this place that we're in, which I'm grateful for. But yeah, it was a really rough transition with being a parentified child and navigating many of the things that I was navigating. So when I was 11, a cousin of mine was attending this boarding school. They had just started there and had like told me about it when we had like met up as a family. And I like asked my mom, and she brushed it off like, no, like absolutely not. But the rebellious and determined child that I've always been, I applied on my own. And then it came time for me to like have to take a test, and I needed to get some paper notarized or something. So I had to like tell my mom.
Yeah.
So I told her, and then I think she was like annoyed that I like went and did this, and but also more like kind of impressed, but not trying to tell me as a kid, like so that it wouldn't entice me, I guess, to go against her word anymore. Yeah. But anyway,
how old were you?
So I was 11.
11.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I was 11. And so she took me. I took the test for admittance. I passed the test. And then we had to get some paper notarized, and it was like $12 to get these papers notarized. I remember it was like a check cashing place I did notary republic stuff too, on Broad and Girard Avenue in North Philly, near the school. The school is called Girard College, by the way. But yeah, I just remember her being like, well, if you want to go, you have to pay for this, and making me figure out how to, I like raised this $12
yeah.
to pay for this fee. And then like, yeah, then I went to the school. And then in the first 2 months, I was like calling her from a payphone.
Yeah.
In my dorm, because I obviously didn't have a cell phone. I was in the 6th grade, begging her to like let me come home, and she refused. And she was just like so cold and so mean. And so talking to her now about this as an adult, what I learned was that it was hard for her at the time, but she in her mind, she couldn't allow me to see that, because this is a decision I made, and she wouldn't want me to get the perception that I could just start something and quit, and I had to follow it through.
Yeah.
And ultimately the school was better than the school I was in prior to that. It was like I was getting in fights. It was just not, and I also was like the smartest person in my class, obviously, because the work wasn't challenging. And then when I went to this, I got in, that was the first part that I thought was hard. I got there, I cried for the first 2 months, because we had mandatory study every night. And so I would be in the study for like 3 hours because I was trying to catch up. I had gone from this environment where I was just one of the smartest kids to literally like, girl, you might need special ed.
Oh,
and
man.
Like that's how I felt.
Yeah.
At the time, because I was just struggling. And so the transition there was really difficult for me to get caught up. Eventually I did, and I graduated one of the top of my class, but it was just a really difficult transition. There were a lot of things going on in my household at the time, even though I was a 5-day boarder. I went to school on Sunday nights, and I came home on Fridays after school. So I had like a day and a half at home.
Yeah.
Which was better for me in terms of being a parentified child, because now my mom had to literally find actual childcare
Yeah,
do all of these things, which affected our relationship and also affected the way that she treated me. And then it was just like angst. Like I was an angsty teenager. I was a very angry teenager. I had already been exposed to so many traumas in terms of violence by this point. And so there was nowhere for me to put that. Eventually I was like mandated to take anger management with a few of my friends at my boarding school, anger management class. That was really kind of us like having fun and joking off, but we learned some anger management tools in there too. Yeah, and so that 2 months of crying, once I realized it wasn't going to work, she wasn't going to come get me, I stuck it out, and I graduated, and I immediately went to college. I was determined to leave, because my entire life, at least in the Black American community, in the Black community in general, in the Black American community specifically, there's issues of colorism between us, and so I was like one of the other people in my family, and so there were all of these narratives and projections put onto me very young, like things like, oh, you need to watch her, she gonna be fast, or
because you're light skinned and
I was cute, chubby and thick, and my, my body was starting to develop, and so I saw my lens change of the world and family, especially males around me, because the way that people treated me started to change. So I, like, the rebellious side of me, I was determined always to get my mother's approval, because she and I were at odds my entire life. And so I always felt like it was nothing, everything I did was never good enough. And so, like, I remember my first semester of high school, I got 1B, and it was like math class, like calculus or something. Now I feel like my mother probably never even taken at that point. And she was just like, you could have done better, like, why is this not an A? And I just remember, like, there was an award ceremony, like honor roll and that sort of thing. And one of my peers, my classmates, her mother came and brought her flowers because it was her first time ever making honor roll. And I was like, I'm not just regular, I'm a high honor roll. And I got 1B. And my mother was nowhere to be found with no flowers. So that was like the tension that kind of built up between us, which really pushed me to go far away for school. I was determined to not be a statistic. And
where did you go to college?
I went to the University of New Haven for my freshman year, and then I transferred to Syracuse. This is actually a coincidence. I didn't intend for.
Well, that's why I wanted to look at I was looking at your shirt. I was going to ask you, like, Syracuse. So I went to Syracuse for beginning of my foundation program. So that's ironic.
Really? Oh, okay. So we're like family. You're an Orangeman.
Yeah, see, that's why we had that connection already, right?
Yeah,
I love
definitely.
it. So I went to Syracuse for a year and a half, and I did my foundation program there. And I was originally studying for surface pattern design, but then I decided.
At Newhouse?
No, it was
the other art
one,
there's two,
And then I transferred over because I was decided to do fashion, and my brother's like, well, you should go back to New York and go to Parsons or Rhode Island or whatever. So I transferred over to Parsons and did that. But I saw your shirt and I was like, I wanted to ask you, I'm like, did you go to Syracuse?
That's funny. When the pandemic first started in 2020, I applied to the new school, and it was going to be in Parsons, but I decided not to go because I couldn't incur the debt at that time. But yes.
Oh my God, look at that. Another like synchronicity right there. So we would never have found out about any of this unless we did the podcast.
Yes, absolutely. And I feel like I'm rambling. She asked me for the short version of my story, but so that was a little bit of background on my childhood. I hope I answered your question.
Well, no, you can speak. I love hearing all of these stories and all of it. It's never rambling to me because it's your journey and it's your path. And I love hearing those stories of it because it's such an important part of a pivotal point of your life and your growth and who you turned out to be and all of it. So I love hearing all the parts and nitty gritty parts of it that, you want to share.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I think it's beautiful that you are getting to the point where you and your mom are having better communication. Is she more supportive as you shared your experience and then she's sharing her experience?
Supportive. I think my definition of that word, yeah, no, you know what? I think that's limiting. Support can look many ways. So yes. At that time though, when I was graduating, my mother and I were not on, like, it was the worst. It was very tumultuous. It was like violent. And I was graduating from Syracuse. And she chose not to attend my graduation because of the boyfriend that she had at that time, because he was not invited. And from there, it got really, really bad, and we didn't speak for 4 years. And so the way my family lives in Southwest, my mother lives on one street, my grandmother lives literally 1 block over, and then my cousin lives another block over, and my aunt at one point lives on this side of my mother's house. So literally, like, after school, I would walk home. Like, I could get to everybody's house, and that's how close my family was, in the same neighborhood and community. And so there were times during those 4 years where I would see my mother either leaving or coming to my grandmother's house, or in passing if I was out, at the market or shopping or doing something. And, I would assume she saw me too, because I saw her, but we wouldn't speak, like literally walk past each other like we didn't know each other.
Wow.
So to this point, yes, to answer your question, this is absolutely a miracle and divine in God, because you could not have told me. I didn't think that we would ever get to this point. And it is not great. As an adult child, trying to tell the parent who stayed all the ways that they abused you, and saying, like, I see your perspective, I understand you did the best you can with what you could, but honoring your own self is not the easiest conversations to have. But I think we've been doing a really good job in navigating those. And the conversation I just had with her the other day was probably the most, I think, productive, where I felt she listened more than she talked, which is hard for moms. I feel like sometimes, because I think the intention is always like, what's your best interest? But one of the things she said to me in that conversation was like, yeah, and you told me that you wanted to live with your dad, and so something, and that's why, and I beat you, and you don't remember this? You were 6 years old. And I said, did you hear what you just said? I was 6 years old, and you beat me because I wanted to go with my father, who you knew was a piece of trash, but I didn't know at the time. I worshiped the ground he walked on. I was a daddy's girl. He was everything to me. So it was like a double. I was like the physical part. More than that the lasting impression was the emotional part of that, because it was like, when he didn't answer, when he didn't come to pick me up, I told you so. And then you beat me too, because I was like,
that's like double like disappointment, double sadness, double like all of it.
Yeah. So I think me repeating that back to her, because she was like standing in her conviction about it, like, yes, no. And when I said, did you hear, like, I was 6 years old, she stopped and paused, and she kind of like retreated a little bit. And I think it took her a moment to kind of recognize that. But I think what's important for me is radical acceptance, as many people like to call it, which I talked about with my therapist like a while ago. One of the therapists. I've been in therapy for a long time, in and out of therapy. But one of the things was just accepting people for who they are, and then understanding and accepting who they may never be.
That's hard.
Yeah, it is, especially when it's that tight, your first relationship in life with your, with your mother and with your father. But we can talk about daddy issues in another episode. We're talking about moms right now. And I think for us to get to this point, it always had to be me. And I think as a child, a parentified child who has experienced traumas and abuses and different things, I'm a suicide survivor, all of those things. I think it took for me to make a choice of what my vision for the relationship was. But in order to get to that point, I literally had to accept who my mother would never be, because I would always compare my mom to my parents, my friends' parents, like their moms. A lot of my friends had older parents. My mom was a young mom. So she was like, I watched her grow up as she was watching me grow up, essentially. But I would always compare my mother to their mothers, because they just, not even that they got everything, which they did. They, some of them had 2 parents in the household, so they have better income or whatever. It was things that I wanted monetarily that my mom just couldn't afford. But more than that, I always felt like their mom showed them love and affection. Now, like in these moments and spaces or other places that I talk to adults when I'm training or when I'm coaching, you know, my mom never said I love you to me as a kid. And I always thought I was alone in that. But to hear other people's stories and to know that other people experience that kind of thing too, I think.
Me too.
Yeah.
That's the same thing. Like there was no hugs, there was no I love you, there was no support.
Right.
There was no acknowledgement of your feelings. Your feelings are non-existent. You need to just sit there, be quiet.
You're a child. Yeah, you don't have
to. A child. Yeah. I don't want to hear your opinions, like none of it. So like if that's been suppressed for so long, where do you put that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And like I had to do a lot of like therapy where I had to grieve the childhood that I never got and always wanted. You know, so that takes a long time to like grieve through that.
I think and I think for folks like us in this generation, sometimes we have to the radical acceptance really came from me when I accepted that in my bloodline I had to teach elders, not just young people, but I also had to teach elders. And that's like not fucking fair. It's just
no,
like I don't do this.
It's exhausting.
But
it's exhausting.
It's very exhausting. But you learn ways to do it better. You find community, you find people so that you don't feel like you're alone. And you stick to it and you hold to your vision for relationships. And then eventually you wake up and you're in Rwanda and you're talking to your mom on the phone for 3 hours.
Yeah. It's really hard to, when you're mourning your childhood and you're mourning, like, you know, I'll never have the father that other people have. I'll never have the mother of all that. So the radical acceptance, that's probably something I probably need to start figuring out, to, you know, just grieve it and let it go, as opposed to keep wanting that thing. But it like transcends to like my relationship with men and my trust issues. And but as I've learned, like I'm learning to trust myself and setting boundaries for myself so that I don't need to look outward for needing that support, guidance from a man.
Well, something you just said about the radical acceptance piece of grieving and healing and moving past it. I think in the beginning you think that that's how it's going to go, but then you learn like grief is a lifelong process and you grieve many different things. And so there is still grief. Like in that conversation, my mother was also very dismissive. She was open to listening. I think now because of the things that I've done and how I think she's impressed with in terms of me as an adult versus where she was at this age. But I think she's still my mom and she's still the same. People don't change. She's still the same person. And so there were moments where things that I said, she was extremely dismissive, that I had to then adjust and use my tools to say, okay, how else can I break this down? How else can I explain so that she can at least see my perspective, even if she doesn't agree with it, and also maintain my boundaries and let her know what respect looks like for me. And so I think, especially when you're talking about parental relationships as an adult child, when you're recovering from a childhood that was abusive or traumatic, like all of the things, there are things for you as a person that you have to unfortunately do to maintain relationships and to make them better, even though you were victimized. I don't want to say you were the victim, but even though you were victimized. And so that is the part that was key for me in the radical acceptance of knowing, okay, this is bullshit. I don't want to have to parent my parent or teach elders or do things that I didn't ask for in this lifetime. But sometimes that is the work that you have to do and to getting to a point where you want to be. Now, after that, there's aftercare that I have to do in terms of having conversations like that. But I think getting to a point where we can have a conversation, and she literally said this in that moment, like, I'm just glad that we were talking about my brother. Their relationship's a whole nother situation. He and I have a different dynamic because of the parentification. There's so many things between us, the three of us. But she said to me, I'm just glad that at least me and you, we can have a conversation without yelling and screaming at each other. And I'm praying for your brother. And that at some point, you know, he and I will be able to do the same thing. So even though she still is like stuck in her ways, or, you know, set in her way, all those things, and in the ways that I had to protect myself, she was still committed to a vision of having a relationship with me. And I knew that, and the radical acceptance was in that statement, even though my mother can't be the mother that I want or the mother that I think that I'm going to be, because I'm sure my child one day is going to be like, let me tell you about yourself. You know, you did something. We all are, I think we're all better than the worst thing we've ever done. So with the radical acceptance, there has to be like equal and responsible forgiveness, first with myself and then with everybody else. That's what I've learned, at least from moving here and having this newfound connection with my mom.
Yeah, no, that's huge. I mean, to have that type of like abuse, like she was physically abusive?
Oh, absolutely. In all the ways. Yeah.
And what about her boyfriends that she had in her life? Like, were they like?
There were not many. I will say this, and I said this to my mother. That was more so with my father in terms of that kind of subjugation of things. With various different women. My mom, I can remember my mom having 2 boyfriends. One of them she was with for about, I would say 9 years, between 9 and 11 years. I don't remember exactly. But I was like a terror to him when he came into my life. He was like the first that my mom actually introduced us to after my father. And so I was like, no, I want my parents to be together. I wanted my mom and dad to be together forever. And I was like, you cannot come in here and destroy my plan, you know, trying to get them back together. So that one was probably the most difficult for her because of how I behaved. Like, I just was rebel. I didn't care. And I was like, I want you to know, I want this person to know he ain't welcome here.
Yeah.
So after that ended, which we ended up actually being very close at the time. What I will say is that I felt like, not necessarily that it was abuse. I don't think this person was abusive. I never experienced them that way. To me, my sibling or my mom, it was more so like, you know, when you know someone's there for the convenience and they treat you a certain way because of someone in proximity to you. So like, as long as he was good with my mom, he was good with us.
Yeah.
When he and my mom were not good, we weren't good. He wouldn't talk to us. We wouldn't see him. And so that part of the inconsistency, I would say, I don't know if I would characterize that as abuse, but it does take a toll on a child, obviously.
It does, because you don't seem important to him to have a relationship enough outside of him and your mom.
Exactly. And so it informed my relationship.
And like real like friendships and relationships, it doesn't matter what your relationship with that person is. It would be more conducive and important to me that you care about me and my well-being. You're still checking up on me. So the fact that you're not checking up on me, it's like, oh, then you really don't care about me.
Yeah. So I would say, in a sense, I wouldn't say that that experience with that partner that my mom had was abusive, but it was very transactional. And I was young when they were together. I would say, like, in that transition of us moving to, you know, to a new house, all those things, that was when she was with this person. And although they were together, we would see him daily. He did not live with us. He did not live in our house. There were moments or times when he would stay, but he had his own separate space. And my mom was very intentional and sure to make sure that always happened. It wasn't until the other one, when I was in college, that was the issue. And I think it was when they started to cohabitate. And I think something that she and I talked about too, she said something that I said to her when I was like a teenager. And I was like, well, you have to understand the mindset of who I was. I was a parentified child. I was very responsible, respectful, all those things. And on one hand, you would be like, we're partners, we're a team. I need you to do this. I need you to get your brother ready for school. I need you to blah, blah. I need you to cook dinner. I need you to do the laundry. I need you to pay this. You know, because I was also working. I had my little, not like supporting my house like my mom was, obviously, but I had my little part-time job and I was contributing in many different ways. And so on one hand, you're saying I'm a partner, and on the other hand, you're telling me to stay in a child's place because I'm telling you things you can't see because you're inside of the relationship. And I'm on the outside looking in, and you can't see that. And so that was very contentious for us, and it just boiled over to a point that it was like, we can't recover from this. And I've always felt that person was responsible or at the center of the chaos. But in growing up and learning, you know, like, obviously he had culpability, but at the end of the day, she was my mother before he came into my life, and she'll be my mother after and she is my mother after he's not in the picture anymore.
Yeah.
So I had to reckon with those things. There was a lot of things directed towards him. And when I say it was tumultuous, it got really bad. It ended up with me calling like authorities because he and my brother had gotten into an altercation. There was just so many moving factors. My father got involved because if there's anything that he was ever reliable for in my life, it was the violence. If somebody was messing with me, he may not show up, he may not pay a bill, he may not pay his child support. But if somebody was bothering me and I called my dad, he was gonna be there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the dynamic of that. And I think my mother, she took that as like the ultimate disrespect. And from then she just went on offense. Like I felt at that time like trying to literally ruin my life. And so we were really, really like enemies, like at odds. And I don't want to get into the details of how ugly that got, but we were just just very ugly to one another.
Yeah.
And I think having this conversation with her now as an adult and her respecting me, as an adult and seeing me that way, still as her child, but as an adult, she got to see how confusing that must have been for me because I was it was always you two grown, you in my business, you doing like I was behaving like an adult because I was giving I was giving adult responsibilities in adult situations. Yeah. But always being reminded that I was not an adult, which was not fair.
Yeah, it's like a contradiction. It's like, which one do you want me to be? Do you want me to be the child? Do you want to be the mother who's taking care of me? Or do you want me to help around the house? If you want me to help around the house, then I should have some say.
Exactly. So that's kind of where we bumped heads. But I think now we have an understanding, even if there's never like a formal apology or, those sorts of things. I think in those conversations, I have enough tools now when I'm triggered, I can wrap it up. Like, okay, I gotta go, Mom. I'm gonna talk to you later and do my aftercare and do the things that I need to do. And then maybe come back to the conversation later from a different approach and say how something made me feel without it blowing up or us getting into an argument or a fight, which I'm really grateful for.
Yeah, that's probably a huge part of your therapy, of being able to set the boundary of when you're triggered and realize I'm gonna flip out soon,
Yeah.
And I need to step away from this before I flip out.
Yes, and she said that to me too. She was like, I let all that go. When people get older, they get real holy and sanctified, which I understand. I feel like I'm holy and sanctified now, but in my own little way. But yeah, so she's older and she's like, you need to let that go. And he's not here anymore. Like just move past it anymore. I'm like, you saying that, but it's not that simple. Because
it's not that simple.
I want to scorch the earth. Yeah. So so she's in that space of like, I just want peace. I'm older, I just want peace. And I'm like, you can't. The only way to get through peace is through. You can't go around it. You have to
first we need to scorch the earth.
Yes, you have to deal with this. But yeah. So
what's your astrology sign?
I'm an Aquarius.
Aquarius.
Mm-hmm.
Do they?
I'm a true Aquarius too. I'm a February Aquarius. There's a distinction.
February. I think my brother's an Aquarius. He's the beginning of February, so I think he might be an Aquarius also.
He is. If he's the beginning of February, he's an Aquarius.
Yeah. So he's got a hot temper.
Yeah.
He's very peaceful, but he's got a hot temper. He's very opinionated. He knows what he wants, and this is the way it's gonna go. It's my way or the highway.
Yeah. And my mother's a Leo. She's literally my opposite astrological sign. But growing up in a house being raised by a Leo as an Aquarius child, oh my God, it was just.
Oh no. So you guys gonna just butt heads because she's a Leo. Yeah. She's gonna be in charge.
Yes. Yes. Oh, and my mom is the Leoist Leo.
And she'll probably just like, listen, just go away. This is my world. Just go away.
Yeah. I mean, not even just that. Like my mom, she got it from her father was the same way. But sometimes she just didn't have to say nothing. It would just be a look.
Yeah.
Up until I was like 19, my mother was still trying to give me beatings, like whoop me and stuff.
Oh my God.
Until,
like, listen, I'm 19. No, we're not doing this.
That was the last beating I got at 19 years old. I'm not joking.
Oh.
And finally I was like, you know what? I could probably beat this lady ass. I can take her. And I thought
Yeah.
about it. And yeah, so from there, it got really, yeah. And I was like, no.
You're like, listen, this is not happening anymore. I'm tired of this. Like, no.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. I believe if I did something that pissed her off now, she'd still, like, I'm 32 years old. She would
Yeah.
still probably, yeah. I don't want to find out, but
Yeah. Yeah. It must be, I don't know, like, because that's how my childhood was also. It's like everything's like anything you do wrong, you either get that look or you get a beating. It's not like
yeah.
just like a little bit of here, it's a beating,
Mhm,
you
mhm.
know? It's like, what the
Yeah.
hell? Like whatever you did, oh, you didn't come home with A's or you didn't come home with A pluses, like, oh, you're not good enough.
Yep.
But yeah, like my parents were never at any of my school functions that I did. I'm like always looking around, like, what? My parents never, they don't have, my parents are always working too. So they had
Yep.
the restaurant
Exactly.
working, probably 12 hours a day. So they were
Yep.
not going to any of my functions.
Yeah. They couldn't. And the expectation was that, because if they were like, I remember my mom coming to my school twice,
Mhm.
2 different times. I think one of the times was when I was being enrolled. The other time was in 4th grade. And she beat me in the back. You know, the elementary school classrooms. I don't know if yours were like this. By the way, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Long Island.
On Long Island. Okay. So the elementary school classrooms back in the day, they used to have the one single person bathroom inside of the classroom. Did you have that?
Oh, no.
Yeah. So
Actually,
it was,
no, I can't say no because my trauma brain, I don't remember.
I understand. I
So
understand.
I don't remember.
The only reason I remember this detail is because that's where I got a beating at school. It's the
Oh,
only time I got embarrassed at school. She never had to do it again because she did it this one time.
oh.
But anyway, it had the door. It was like a swinging door, so it would swing either way until it stopped.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I think the teacher called her while she was at work and was like, I was talking too much, whatever it was that I was doing to get on this teacher's nerves.
Yeah.
My mom came. She told the teacher, like, don't tell her I'm coming. Because her thing was, if I get a call and I'm at work and I have to, like, I'm gonna miss my money, you're gonna owe me because I'm missing my pay.
Yeah.
I understood socioeconomic politics for poor and working class people, even that young in that way. I knew if I acted up, that was my ass. Don't make me have to come to the school. So my teachers never saw my mom except for that one time. And she came. She was like, the teacher, don't tell her that I'm coming. I don't know what I was doing. I turned around, I saw my mom. I knew from the sight of her, I was like, oh, today's, like
going down.
My life is over. Everybody's gonna know I'm gonna be embarrassed. And she beat my ass in that bathroom. And then she went and took her ass back to work.
Oh my God. And then you can hear it all because it's a swinging door.
Exactly. That was the part. I'm like, it wasn't even just the physical abuse because I was used to getting my ass beat, but it was the emotional part because I was like, no, I'm lying. There were 2 times because there was a time when I was in high school that she did this to one of my friends who was in my house.
Yeah.
And it was extremely embarrassing, extremely violent. Even for them to witness, we talked about it as adults.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the type of parent that she was because she had to work so much. It was like, I have to train you, almost break my shoes so that in terms of being on a team, this is what you have to do.
Yeah.
So I became one of those kids where the teacher's like, oh no, she's amazing, but we never see her parents because we don't have to. We know that she's going to be good like that because we knew if my mom had to leave work or take off work, all bets were off.
Now, through all of this of your childhood and the abuse, and how did you have depression? Did you have like other emotional things you had to work through? And you said that, you shared with us a very deep part of your life where you were suicidal before. So how did you get through all of that to where you are today?
I think I'm still getting through it, to be honest. It's become like flexing a muscle now, so it's easier for me to get through. But I would say I honestly started dealing with depression when I was like 9. Like when it sunk in that my parents were never going to get back together, I was like, oh, this is really over. And then at that moment, all of those transitions of moving, going to a new house, and she and I were talking about that. So she was like, yeah, you used to just tell me how much you hated it here. And I was working my ass off to provide this better life and this housing for y'all because we were living with so many people, with my grandparents, all those things. And I was like, at the time, I didn't care about that. I missed all my friends. You moved me across the city to another neighborhood. I ain't have no friends. And then I was a latchkey kid. So my mom was at work. I picked up my brother from school. By the time we got home, my mom had already been at work for like 2-3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And come in, lock the door behind you, set the alarm, and don't open my door for nobody. That was that was the parenting I had.
Yeah.
Don't open my door for nobody. And so that means I can't go outside. I've been at school all day with probably one of these teachers who's getting on my nerves. I'm tired. I've been sitting at a desk, all the things that kids have to deal with. And I understand this now too, after having been a teacher. And so that time I was just like really, really depressed. It would just be me and my little brother in the house. He always like, you have siblings, you know how siblings can be. It was just not fun. And I was just like, I actually hate this life. I want to go back to how life was before, even though I was living in a house with like 12, 16 people.
Mm-hmm.
At least I had fun. I wasn't bored, it wasn't lonely. I wasn't bored. And so that was when my depression really, really started. I think it got really, really bad in terms of the suicide ideations in my later teen years.
Mm-hmm.
But the hustle and bustle of just trying to get to the next thing. I was like an overachieving child. Like I said, I always just wanted my mom's approval. So I was always involved in something in high school, doing this, doing that, going this place, going that place. Until it finally caught up with me in my mid-20s, where it was like, I actually can't master this. I can't work my way out of this. I can't be the example that my family needs of all these, like, I can't work my way out of this. I actually have to go through it and deal with it. And it just came to a head, and I just made a decision, and I was like, I'm tired.
Mm-hmm.
I'm done. And this was probably my second year of teaching. I had gotten like my favorite meal at the time, like from a local place near my apartment.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Delaware, which, if you know anything about Delaware, is for families, not young single people. So.
It's very. I go to Delaware every summer.
Oh yeah. I was very depressed. It was like how I was before. I was like back into this depressed state. All these things. All I was doing was working crazy hours as a teacher, doing extra stuff, tutoring after school, like all types of stuff. I would just overwork myself so that I didn't have to deal with these things that eventually I just couldn't escape anymore, and they took over. And I just made up my mind, like, whatever is next gotta be better than this. And I'm out of here. See y'all later. I texted my best friend and like told her, I love you, goodbye. And she is the person who intervened and like sent police to my house, which was a whole nother layer of trauma for both of us. Because I had a very traumatic experience with police in the past, with police brutality in Syracuse, actually. That like caused a lot of issues with me being in therapy. So I think all of those things coming to a head. And then I had a student in my class who had told me after a holiday break, had came back and told me about a sexual assault that they experienced from a family member. And like all these memories of things that I had like literally blocked out, when I mean like completely blocked out, that I didn't remember until like came flooding me. And all of that coming together, because I think people always ask me like, well, what was it that made? And I was like, it wasn't one thing. It was just over time. The bottle cap popped, and it was, and I was over. I was just really tired and exhausted. I'm very grateful for the people who supported me and helped me get through that. Primarily my best friend, who made the call and was there and came to Delaware, and did all those things. Literally, she had my computer. I was admitted at this point against my will. They were holding me for 72 hours. I don't know if anybody knows anything about the process, but it's usually a 72-hour hold until they can assess and see your mental state.
You're okay.
And I almost got out of, and then I said to the lady, and she was like, so if I let you leave now, what are you going to do? And I was like, it was like a Saturday. I was like, I have to do my lesson plans. I got to go to work on Monday. And she looked at me and was like, I'm not letting you go anywhere. You think that you're going to go to work? And so that was like the thing that made her like hold me, which pissed me off. I was so livid. But it was time that I needed to myself. I got to actually read a book for pleasure that I had not done in years, since before college. And my best friend was in my apartment with my computer sending my sub plans to my principal because nobody even knew. They just thought I was sick, but they was like, oh, she has the flu, like that type of thing for an entire week that I was out because I was in this facility. And I haven't even told anybody this part. So look at you being vulnerable in terms of
thank you
opening
for
up like that.
sharing. I appreciate you
Yeah.
being vulnerable and sharing.
Yeah, but the
Because I feel like your story will help somebody else who's going through these
yeah,
difficult times, so every story helps and every story will heal.
absolutely. There were just so many layers of that. One of the parents of one of my students worked at the facility,
Oh my
and I was
God.
like, yeah, and I saw them.
So
So I'm
you're
like,
like,
are you sure?
your face probably dropped when you saw them.
Yes. And I was almost certain that she saw me. I told the staff or whatever, and they're like, no. And plus HIPAA laws and blah, blah, blah. And of course it came back to me through students. But the story, which was funny, it's funny when you hear stories about yourself that are not true. And they're like, actually, that's what happened. If you want to say something, say this. But it was kind of that type of thing. And the story was that I was in rehab because I was an alcoholic. I do not drink alcohol, by the way. I don't drink alcohol, which is why it was so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
So yeah, my journey with depression is still even here. Like I've experienced something that I just found out is called relocation depression. And I was like, I got enough depressions. Why are you trying to give me another one?
Yeah. Well, because you're in a whole new place and you need to make new friends. You need to, find new restaurants. The whole thing is completely like new for you. So your depression and suicide attempt, was that just one time or?
No, I've had two attempts, both of them within a year of each other, which was like the lowest. I would say between, what's my trying to count back the years? That was 27 and 28. The first one was in 2018. A day after my birthday, a month after I had taken the Momentum workshop, which was called Music at the time. It opened up Momentum,
right?
Yeah, it opened up so many things. And then all of these other, like I said, my student came with that brought up all this stuff for me.
Yeah.
And their abuser was also one of my students who I still had to teach and show up and not be different, right? So it was just so many things that I had to do and manage that just boiled over. But there were two. They were both in a year of each other. The first one was life. The second one was because of a relationship, which we can get into the conversation about how my childhood and upbringing and trauma has influenced my relationships with men. It was a very abusive relationship that I was in with a former partner, that in turn caused me to try to kill myself again.
So now who was able to save you that second time? Was your best friend still around that?
She was absolutely still around, but from a distance.
Yeah.
The first attempt had really fractured our relationship, but I was able to save myself.
Oh my God. Well, tell us about that.
I think it was just the radical acceptance piece of the realization that no matter how hard I'm trying, God is not going to let me die. And no matter like how bad something gets, the sun will come up again. Like that realization, And so then it became a matter of like, okay, well, if this is not going to work, what is the next best thing for me to get to? It was more so at the time. And I remember saying this to my best friend, like, I just am tired. I don't want to, I'm exhausted. And like getting through that part and the burnout and healing that part it gave me the possibility of being able to see other possibilities. And I think once I was able to move even like an inch, like a mustard seed of a move from that space of like completely hopelessness. In my early 20s, I used to, be engaged in like protests or, with the start of, I know everybody is like, George Floyd changed everything, but with the start of like the Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman trial, I really became more involved politically. And it politicized me in a way where I was like, as a young person, I need to do my part. I
Yeah.
don't want to have kids. I want to, die for the revolution, that type of thing. And that type of work is really, really taxing.
Yeah.
Being a Black person and a woman at the same time
Yeah.
is like the most amazing thing, but it's really difficult. And I think all of those things came to a head. And in that relationship, this person was obviously taking advantage, and I was really vulnerable to that.
Mhm.
And they actually induced it. I don't want to give them total blame because I also have culpability in the relationship.
Yeah.
But they induced it. They actually told me like where their gun was and to kill myself when I said I was having
Oh,
ideations. This
oh
is
my
it was
God.
very abusive,
Yeah.
extremely abusive. It was familiar,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm not joking. I know there are people who are like, and they have valid, I understand. I'm a very critical thinker, and I understand why people are like, that doesn't exist. This is just life. God is not there. But like literally God got me out of that.
Yeah.
And there were days where I just got on my knees and I begged, not even prayed. I begged God, like, please, if you just get me out of this,
Yeah.
I will commit to being alive.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first part, like committing to want to be alive
Yeah.
before I could start creating the life that I dream about.
Mm-hmm.
Which now my life is so different and so amazing. But yeah, that was the thing. And I think after that, realizing, okay, girl, this is your second attempt. It's
Mm-hmm.
probably not gonna happen for you, at least not now. It's something that you're still being called to do in the earth. It's a reason.
Yeah.
And accepting, the radical acceptance was accepting that I didn't know what the reason was. I didn't know what it was about. I didn't know I was supposed to be creating the Black spot, all those things at the time. But that was that was literally the first part of
Committing.
moving.
Yeah,
Mhm.
committing it to it and realizing that you are meant to be here for more of a purpose, like that's one of the questions I like to ask people is, what do you think the purpose of life is?
I think for all people, the general purpose of life is to experience humanity and all of the intricacies of humanity in terms of like feeling and thinking deeply.
Mhm.
For me, I think people have individual purpose, which is what, in terms of my coaching, I always tell people like I coach people to and through their ancestral assignment.
Mhm.
I think there are things that are connected to ancestors that require us to do our part in getting the completion of putting the puzzle together or whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
And I think the experience of life is a journey to figuring out and fulfilling that. And I think when we don't do that, we get sent back. And I think those ancestors are like, actually, we got to run this back.
Yeah.
You need to do, you need to do this over and do it better. You need to teach elders the thing. Like, this is your place. At least for me, this is your place in our lineage and our bloodline for past generations on the ancestral plane to future generations that have not been thought of yet.
Yeah.
And I also think that it's possible for people to experience a lifetime, because, when we die, life does not end, to experience a lifetime and not figure that out and not know what it is, and not, and not activate that drive or operate in that purpose. That's totally possible.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like our purpose these days is to sit in more of our authenticity and to be able to connect to people and be able to, build a community where we can all help each other in all of this. And, through conversations and through this podcast, I feel like it's a beautiful connection and community that we can share all these tips and tricks. And do you have a favorite quote that you would like to share with anybody?
A favorite quote that I would like to share. I have notes in my phone of quotes. Okay. One of my favorite quotes is by Toni Morrison, and it reads, "All water has a perfect memory and is forever trying to get back to where it was."
I love that. I love that. That's the purpose of life.
Yeah.
So every time we're feeling uncomfortable, we're trying to get back to our source. I love it. That's beautiful. I'll share one that I just fell in love with. I was binging on Netflix, Queen Charlotte.
Okay, I keep hearing about this. I didn't think that I would like it, but I'm
Yeah.
gonna give it a try.
Yeah. I didn't think I would like any of these, but Netflix keeps thinking that I want to watch certain things. So I
Yeah.
started to just give in and be like, all right, I'm just gonna watch it. So I
Mhm.
originally started watching Bridgerton before Queen
Okay.
Charlotte. And I really like Queen Charlotte. So then I actually went back to watch Bridgerton again because now things are all connected and all looped together. And I didn't
Maybe
realize.
I'll do it like that because when Bridgerton came out, I was like, I don't want to see this.
No,
Um,
no, watch Queen Charlotte first. It's
first, okay,
it's
I'll do that.
better because when I went back to watch Bridgerton, it kind of annoyed me. So I was like, now I know understand why it annoyed me because whatever it was. But anyway, I think Queen Charlotte. But once you watch Queen Charlotte, you'll have all the connections, and you're like, oh, that connects to this, and then you'll like watch the Bridgerton.
Okay.
But it's really interesting. So I rewatched Bridgerton, and there was a quote in there that I wrote down, and I just find it funny that that I thought it was amazing. So it was on season 2, episode 6. It's called The Choice. And she's talking to another friend and she's asking him, you know, like, did you find your purpose? Like, are you good today? And she said, you will find your purpose one day. Everyone must eventually. And the guy's like, have you found yours? And she said, of course not. But I imagine it'll be something both animating and satisfying. The type of venture that speaks not to whom I am, but who I am to be. My purpose will challenge me to be brave and witty. My purpose will propel me for beyond the watchful glare of my mom. My purpose shall set me free. And I was just like, oh, that's so beautiful. So I kept rewinding and listening to it. I'm like, that's
Yeah,
so beautiful.
that is really beautiful. That's a beautiful perception of the reality of the experience of being a human
Yeah.
in this lifetime.
Yeah, it's to be brave and it's to constantly keep pushing, and it's hard and it's tiring. It's tiring because if you didn't have that parental support, like where I was, like it's exhausting. Like I used to always bulldoze through all of my, checklist of things I need to do to be, because I want that approval. You want that approval, you want that support, and you want that validation. Absolutely. And those are basic human fundamental things that you need as a child. If you don't get that, you're constantly seeking that, So if you don't get it as a child and then as an adult, you still don't get it from a partner, you get it with friends, but it's just not the same. It's not that.
You have to learn how to build the foundation to source it within yourself.
Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah.
Because we're meant to have connections. So, so it gets tiring. So so I've been in this process of trying to source it within.
Yes, I totally can relate to that. I like that. Like several people have told me about Bridgerton and Queen Charlotte, and I was like, maybe on a day when I'm bored and I will watch it, but I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna watch Queen Charlotte now. Yeah, Queen Charlotte is actually my name.
Charlotte's your middle name?
No, it's my mother's name.
Oh, really? That is interesting. That's interesting. So yeah, you gotta watch Queen Charlotte.
Yep.
So when you were talking to your mom, did you find out like how her childhood was and how it was, like
that's what actually extended the conversation to almost be 3 hours. This was the first time that I felt like she was this open. She mentioned briefly, she didn't go into detail, but the way elders mentioned things around sexual assault with other people in the family, of someone. He's deceased now, so I can say his name. I feel like hopefully nobody come from you, but whatever, y'all. This is my mama truth.
Yeah.
His name was Uncle Frank. So we're just gonna give him that pseudonym, Uncle Frank. He was like, he had predatory behavior from the way that she described her experience of him. And that she was always like, whenever he was around, I would just try to get away. Like I would not be around. I would not be in the house or whatever. And so we kind of got to really connect and vibe on like the experiences that we both had as women in this life. And then the experiences of men. She talked about the things that she was subjected to by my father. Some of them I knew, some of them I didn't. And she owned something that a family member shared with me about her past that I did not know until the family member told me, that I felt she was really ashamed of, or that she thought I would look at her differently. And I was very intentional to say, it doesn't make me look at you any differently, like say those words. And I think that allowed the vulnerability to just intensify, like for both of us to really engage in the conversation and share vulnerably, but also in a way that it was kind of humorous. We were laughing at things as well, like how unserious like certain things were in the past, or like how the effects, like sometimes you just have to laugh to keep from crying about certain stuff. And so that's kind of like the nature of like how the conversation ended, which was really great. But she did start to share. We talked about her mother, and like her mother's childhood, and dissecting the generational things. So yeah, I hope that we can have more conversations like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's hugely you had those conversations, because then it brings a humanity of it, and then it breaks it down to where you realize like, oh, you had this trauma that made you the way you are, and makes you parent the way you're parenting because of what you've been through. And you think you're doing the right thing because that's what you went through, and you're just unconsciously doing the same generational trauma over and over again. You know? And there has to be a person that breaks it, and that's you.
Yeah, it is. I've accepted that part of my ancestral assignment. I used to be very resistant to it, but yes.
But yeah, as long as you have like a community of people that you can talk to, and also to unload it, and to do that self-care afterwards, because it's a lot of weight on your shoulders. So do you have more support now that you can talk to more people about this, so you don't have to just keep absorbing all of it?
Yes and no. I think I have the same level of support that I've always had. I think I have learned in my growth how to accept support. I think sometimes we misconstrue not having support, or what our mind tells us, or the environment or the circumstances that we're currently going through. Like, I'm alone, it's nobody else that's going through that, nobody understands, et cetera, et cetera. And I think there are always people who are standing by waiting to support us, and we struggle to accept it and receive it because of whatever we're hiding behind. Or ask for it. And I was a parents by child, but also like I'm a very independent person, which is also showing up in my relationship right now with my partner. My mom used to cut the grass. Me and my mom, one day she was like, I want to remodel the bathroom. And we watched some YouTube. This when YouTube was like first coming out. We watched some YouTube videos. We went to Home Depot. She got like a Home Depot credit card, I think. And we put up drywall together, and like we figured it out, and you could tell it was a homemade remodel, but it was our bathroom, and it was great.
You did it. You guys did it all by yourself.
So I also think a part of that is, even though there was so much bad, abnormal things, and I had to spend my brain power and my life surviving when most of my peers, like I said, I used to be envious of my friends' relationships with their mothers, or whatever the thing was. There were also so many things that I learned from my mother, that she taught me directly or indirectly. One of those things that I've had to re-navigate and relearn now, which is the Black independent woman trope, because that was my mom. My mom did everything. Everything. She did everything. And so in that, I'm in a relationship now after moving here, and low-key manifesting this relationship, but also like it happened on accident. And so now, being in a committed relationship with a very, very African man who grew up in Africa.
So you met him when you went to your
I met him when I came to Rwanda. And he's not from Rwanda. He's actually from Nigeria. I don't know if you know anything about African people, but that's why I'm here to teach people. but he's very Nigerian. And the culture is different. I think many cultures outside of the US have this in common in terms of the way patriarchy operates. America kind of hides and make it seem like we got choices, but then they be snatching Roe v. Wade and other stuff back.
Yeah.
But outside of the world, it's just overt. Like they be like, "You're a woman," you know, like that.
Like,
kind of
no,
thing.
it's like really like what I know about it. You can tell me, like, they're very strong, headstrong. It's very like, they're the man. These are what's gonna happen, and you're the woman. Your position is here, and the man's position is here. But they're very, very headstrong. So like traditional Asian men, they're the same way, where it's like, no, you're the woman. I'm the man. We do this. It's my rules. So yeah.
Yes. And I think that that's the way he was socialized in his, where he grew up in his culture, which is totally different from me. And so there is a layer of like, where you grow up, where you're socialized in terms of me being an American, a Black American, which is important to say, or like if you're an Asian American, because I know Toni Morrison also says it's about hyphenating, everybody else. American means white, but everybody else has to hyphenate. But I think for him, I had to learn.
Oh yeah, that's really interesting. That's a whole nother podcast. And it's, why do we have to hyphenate it, right? Like, why do I need to say I am Asian American?
Right, because
that's really interesting. We're gonna have to have more conversations.
Yeah, and that's not from me. That is from Toni Morrison. My favorite author, also where the quote came from. But anyway, so yes, we had to learn across cultures, right? There's the cultural differences that people go through generally, but I think the added layer of me being a fatherless daughter, if we let's call a spade, facts are facts. That's not to say I don't know my father. I know who he is, all those things, but he's very absentee and out of my life, all those. So there's a wound there that I am nurturing and healing that I just learned how to do properly.
Really?
Not with, I mean, it takes time in terms of your journey, like before, not with substances or working it away or doing all, like, even if you go to therapy, like that doesn't fix all those things. Even when I go to prayer service or I go to,
you got to practice it with a healthy relationship. Like if you don't practice it in a healthy relationship, therapy's great, conversations are great, but you got to actually have a healthy relationship. Right. That's the whole thing. So do you think you're having a healthy relationship with him now?
Absolutely. It's the healthiest relationship I've ever had. I will say that. I think there's a liminal space between knowing and learning, like having awareness and then actually implementing it into your practice. And then my practice of living, because I remember I told God, you help me get out of this, I'm committed to living.
Yeah.
Type of life now we're going to have to talk about, but I'm committed to be here. That was the first. So in that, for him, it's like, so what do you mean you wanted to kill you? Like that don't exist. That's the white man. Like he's very African, so he doesn't understand. I have to really be intentional, and not just communicating to me, but like helping him to comprehend, and also for him to help me comprehend many things I just did not understand because I was not socialized in that way. So there are challenges. It is very difficult at times.
I'm sure you're getting a lot of lessons in this relationship.
Yes. But it's things, but this is the part, that's what I mean, the space between awareness and knowing and then putting it into practice. Because in therapy, I've been aware of these things for a number of years now, right?
Because you're a very intellectual person. You can analyze a lot of things, but until you practice it.
Yeah, but you have to, some things you just have to go, you have to experience it.
Yes.
And this is my first relationship after that really, really abusive one. After, really stepping into a place of my power and really deciding that I want to be alive and what I want to do with my life and my impact. So explaining that to this very Nigerian man who is like, where I come from, women just cook every day. This is their life. And,
that's the opposite of what you've been taught or growing up as. So you're the complete opposite of what he's used to.
Yes, and he's the complete opposite of what
you're used to. Yes, so it's a huge learning experience for the two of you. So how long have you guys been dating?
We have been dating for 8 months. I met him 1 week to the day, my 7th day in Rwanda. I met him.
Oh, 7th day.
My 7th day in Rwanda. September 14th. he was my next door neighbor. We no longer live next door to each other, but he was my next door neighbor, and that's how we met.
Is he receptive of all of these things that you're, you know, like your experiences and all the things that you went through and your trauma and suicide attempts? Like, is he able to talk to you through all of this as well and open to it?
He's open. I don't know if I would say he's able at this point to talk me through things. He is definitely a thought partner and is very patient. There are things that come up for me when I'm triggered. He's probably the most patient man I've ever met. But there are still limitations within that. And I think it goes back to the lesson of sourcing it within yourself. And just like I can't be everything to everybody, every relationship I have, everybody is not going to be everything to me. There are deficits in my relationship with my mother. Is it the best our relationship has ever been? Absolutely. Do I believe it's going to get better? Yes, because I'm still working at making it better. But there are things that my mom just can't provide me, that I need to go to therapy for, that I need to talk to my best friend for, that I need to, you know, find fulfillment in other ways. And so I think accepting that and still choosing this person as they are still choosing me, and accepting that there are certain things. I'm not cooking every day. We're gonna get a house for at least for us both. I'm gonna speak for him in this moment. We are both committed to having it work out.
See, well, that's your intentions and your commitment to it, which is the most important thing. Because like, if you don't have that commitment to your vision of the relationship, then what are you what is it? What are you doing exactly? You know, so there's the purpose, intentions, and commitment. So I love that. That's a great tip for people to, you know, realize also.
Definitely. I don't know if I answered your question. I feel like
it's okay. These are just like girlfriend conversations. I know we just go on tangents about things. I've actually just like kind of just do these conversations intuitively, where I think it's just fun to just get on and just chat, and you know how your childhood and goes from here to there, and I just think it's beautiful. So I don't have, when I tried to make it such a set format, it doesn't work as well, because I'll be looking at it hard and I'll be like, okay, so next question. So what is, you know? Right.
Okay, good.
So I'm completely happy with whatever our conversations go. And I'm super grateful and appreciative that you shared, you know, a lot of your vulnerable things that, you know, happened in your life, that, you know, and I really think that we can have more of these conversations, because, you know, we have a lot more to unpack. I feel like it would help other people.
Absolutely.
But definitely we should do more of these podcasts. We'll, you know, pick a topic of like what you want to share, like the hyphenation of, you know, being Asian American and Black American, and you know, all of that is like just crazy to me too.
And it's funny because I think we've culturally, everyone in America, we've kind of adopted that, like, America, that's the default of American, to be white. Because when I visit family in the South, I spend my summers as a kid. I used to spend my summers in North Carolina in the country, and I would come back for the school year. My maternal grandmother's sister, my great aunt, helps raise me, because I guess my mom's a young mom. So I would get both experiences of the city and the country life. And most of the time, like, I was taught, like, when you see that many American flags, like, it's probably dangerous. It's like radical white people.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's not a joke. Like, really, especially down south. So when I think about the American flag, it's not like being here, like being abroad and seeing people, they're very proud of their country, like nation. They are very, and for us, it's like,
for Americans to put their American flag out is not the same thing.
Right, exactly.
Not the same thing. That's a good segue for, you know, people to, you know, stay tuned for the next conversations that we'll have. Yes, so I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
I know, I'm so thankful and appreciative for you to join me here today, and anybody who's still listening to the end of this, to click subscribe and to leave a comment of where you're at and where you're listening from, because I'd love to hear it, and maybe I'll give a shout out to the next one when we do, whoever leaves a comment. So I really appreciate you being here and sharing your stories, and I'm excited for more of these conversations that we're going to do.
Me too. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And have a great day, and we'll catch up soon.
You too. Talk to you later.
Thank you. Bye.